Hello everyone, so it's been a little while since I've last done a video. I did some of the holiday collection from Bath & Body Works, and then I was planning on doing videos on the Sweet Shop collection. I actually recorded 2 videos, but they were just too long and rambly, and I feel like they didn't really bring anything super new to the conversation, so I ended up not uploading those, so what are you gonna do? But I did want to come back with, I guess, kind of 3 mini reviews in one here, and then I will do 2 reviews on the new Natural Elements 3-wick candles at Bath & Body Works, the kind of squat, shorter candles that are currently in stores. But I wanted to do a review on these 3 here that you know, there's been so much that's been really boring and not interesting at Bath & Body Works recently, and most of the spring collections, if you can even call it a spring collection, are just crap, and not even just repackages that we've seen before, but repackages of just the same like 10 to 15 cents they do in every collection they can all year round, except for, you know, Christmas and or holidays and fall and winter. So just really like uninspired there. If you check out my other channel, The Gentleman Next Door, you saw I did a review of Harry Slatkin's recent Homeworks collections. Really loving those. I've put them aside for a little bit later in the spring after I did my first initial burns and reviews, because I'm more of a seasonal burner. But I did end up also ordering his, I guess you could call it, I don't know if it's a figure roll, but his cottage that came with Apple Orchard. So I'm really excited to get that. I'll definitely be doing a review on that. Not sure if it'll be here or the other channel, but I wanted to start doing some things over on the other channel, since that's where I spend most of my time now. But occasionally when I do like the, you know, the crazy person deep dive reviews, I will still do them here on TouchTheFireTwice. So getting back to my main point, the 3 candles here are Bath & Body Works. Not sure this even has a collection name, but they're kind of their medium or single wick jars that they do now. What I was saying of there being like very few interesting scents, for whatever reason, this collection of, I believe, 5 candles, 3 of the 5 are actually quite interesting and unique, but of course it figures then they would never actually throw those into a large collection, a 3-wick collection. They play it super safe there. So as you see though, I've got these 3 here, and I have 3, let's call these mystery candles, that I'm going to compare them to, because actually I believe 2 of these are, if not direct, a very close, you know, repackaged with a twist of some old candles that we haven't seen for at least a couple of years, which is partially why I found them interesting, but also just they're really nice blends. So in this collection, you've got Sweet Tobacco, Almond Matcha, Iris, and then what I didn't get, Lilacs, and then Yuzu. So Lilacs was just the standard fresh cut lilacs that is like one of the 3 or 4 florals that actually release nowadays that they've had for 10 years, and they just keep bringing it back and back and back. And it's nice as lilacs go, but it's very boring. Been there, done that, I think, for many of us at this point. And then Yuzu was actually very nice. I would venture to say likely repackaged, but I'm not sure exactly of what. It's Yuzu is actually a citrus fruit from Asia. I think in Japan they eat a lot of it, and in Korea as well. They make Yuzu jams and tea and cocktails, and it's a really the actual fruit itself, you don't eat much of unless you make it, like blend it into a tea. It's just kind of too, there's not much pulp to it, and it can be very sour and bitter. But more so the rind is very floral, fragrant, really nice, and if you sweeten it up, it can be delicious. And it was a nice smelling candle, but it's kind of a generic citrus, so I didn't pick that up. So I grabbed these 3. I burned, I think, 2, maybe only the 1. I haven't burned the other 2 yet, but I'll talk a bit about the burn, a little bit about the aesthetics here, but primarily, of course, we're going on the scent. So the first one here, Sweet Tobacco. This is not the first time they've released a candle with tobacco in the name. They've done a few over the years. I think people shy away because they hear tobacco and they think cigarettes, which, you know, how dumb can you be? Because it really is a completely different scent when it is a tobacco leaf that is much more resinous and rich and earthy, and doesn't smell like cigarette smoke or burning or anything like that. But first we'll just start with the aesthetics. I really I'm liking this. It's simple. It doesn't scream, you know, Bath & Body Works or cheap or trying to be something that's not. It's just very simple with like a bit of the artistic rendering of an image back there. It's not going, when I say it's not going on gimmicks, it's not using the stolen, images, which who knows, this could be stolen clip art, but stolen images from Pinterest or from Etsy, and they're the quotes that they do now. It's just like the lowest common denominator. But these ones are a little bit cohesive, and I think they're slightly sophisticated, a little bit classy. And it just says here, made with soy wax and essential oils, scented candle, White Barn. Of course, on the bottom, you've got the standard stuff here. Now this one, they claim essential oils. You know how I feel about that. I believe most of what we're smelling is likely not an essential oil. It's the synthetic blend, and maybe for so they're not false advertising. There might be some version of an essential oil in there, but I don't think it's anything significant. Now the notes in this one are tobacco leaf, golden honey, and sweet cherry. Now a lot of times, like Great Uncle Joe's pipe or whatever, if he smoked tobacco, it oftentimes has, I think, like when people think of that, it has a bit of a cherry blend to it, which whether it's cherry tobacco or just like a really kind of wet, resinous, sticky tobacco has like a natural cherry note to it. I'm not sure, but definitely that's what you get in this. Now, before I compare and sniff, I will talk about the burn. This one I did not burn, so maybe I'll show you on the Almond Matcha. I do think these are actually, wow, I just opened that and I already caught a whiff of it. These are very strong blends, which is really nice. I believe the wax actually is a different blend than the 3 wicks that we're used to. It says soy wax scented candle, and I think that it is truly a soy wax. I don't think it's a vegetable, paraffin, whatever blend. I think it's true soy wax, because as you can see, anytime you burn soy wax and then blow it out, it kind of gets this like, almost like I'd say cottage cheese texture, where it gets these like craters in it, and it's not necessarily pleasing to the eye, but it's fairly clean burning. It can leave some residue on the side of the jar, but in this like kind of brown apothecary jar, you don't really notice it. And I just love how, again, simple, I would almost call it apothecary, but like how simple this is. So, but this wax is different, and it does remain pretty soft. It's like you push on it and you can make a finger mark in it. So I wonder why that they're doing pure soy wax in some of these. I don't know if it's only in the small amounts because it's more expensive, or they like the burn, or they're trying to be more natural, so that's why they do an all soy. Not sure, probably marketing if it comes down to anything. But it burns nicely, gets a good throw, pulls fairly quickly, and for a single wick, really impressive throw. Even in my kitchen and into my great room, at least the one that I've burned so far has given a really nice throw. Now they retail $14.50. They were, I believe, 2 for $16. So you try to do it when there's at least a 20% off or a 10 off 30 coupon, so you don't end up paying a whole lot. But these are 7-ounce jars. When they used to do the small single wick jars, compared to their 14-ounce candles, I believe they were always 4 ounces. This is a little bit bigger than what they used to be, but of course those 4 ounces were $10 and usually on sale for $5, not $8 in this case. But want to get into the scents, and then we'll compare one by one. So sweet tobacco, oh boy, it is sweet. So again, it's like you definitely get, it says the honey in there, and a lot of times I don't buy it when they say there's honey in a candle, but not actual honey, but a honey scent. I really do get that in here with that like sweet, earthy tobacco. Think similar to vetiver, but without getting even as much woodsy or green. Just really like, yeah, it's a really nice. I wouldn't, yes, I guess you could call it masculine, but it's just, it really, to me, it puts you in a library or in a leather chair or just a cool fall evening. I think they could market this scent, call it something else without the tobacco, and people would, eat it up where they love their mahogany teak wood. But I just think it's really, really nice. And you do get a bit of a cherry note in there. But again, I feel like they're calling that out, and that's something that maybe is more naturally in certain types of like pipe tobacco. But again, it really is worth sniffing if you have not and you just think you wouldn't like it, because it brings again, it almost a bit, it's as if it's woody, but it's not. It's earthy, it's deep. It is almost cloying, but in a way that's not like a syrupy sweet cloying, so it doesn't bother me, but really nice. What I have to compare that to, really one of the few other tobacco scents that they've ever released, which it is not the same though, was Havana Heat Sweet Tobacco and Spice. Now they also released this as, I want to say, Ski Lodge at one point. not Ski Lodge. It was one that was in like a packaging that was a big cardboard packaging and had a metal rim around the top, but no lid. It was, I think, a White Barn exclusive back in, or a failed test collection in like 2013 or 2014. And then this might have come out, this was one of the biggest destination collections they ever had back in, I think, 2014, like late 2013, early 2014. And I remember, I think in my original review of this, I said it was ridiculous that it was, you know, like a ski lodge off of the slopes warming up, and then in the very next candle it was in Cuba. So I was like, all right, is it hot or is it cold? Like, where does it live? The notes on this one were sweet tobacco, amber, and spice. This one, I would say, is actually, yes, there's tobacco. I'd say there's more. Years later, I'm getting more of the amber. And there is some sort of spice in there. It's not nearly as authentic, actually, as thanks to the cherry and the tobacco being the primary note in this. The sweet tobacco, it is stronger and more of a tobacco, but certainly if someone liked one, they'd like the other. But this one, I think the sweet tobacco here is actually more authentic and stronger. So big fan of that. Then we move on to iris. Now, I generally am a fan of, there's certain flowers in body fragrance and home fragrance that really bring a unique edge that you wouldn't think. You know, you've got so many of your standard florals that you know exactly what they are and they come through as a floral, but there's some florals that actually don't necessarily, you don't think flowers when you sniff them, and when you blend them with other things, they become really complex. Top of mind really becomes iris, and also geranium tends to do that as well. So this you would think is just going to be some standard floral, certainly based on the name being just a single note here and there being flowers on the candle. And the notes are, this is where it gets really interesting: weathered leather, sugared violet petals, and cardamom. So you've got a really pungent spice, you've got a leather, which could really go in many directions, and then of course sugared violet petals. They don't mention iris, but you assume it's in there. And sniffing this, oh boy. Now it does smell like a sweet kind of unisex cologne almost. It's not leather in the way that you would expect leather to be from, gosh, what was it? Like really even the Fireside Candle or any other leather that's been in there. It's much sweeter and fresher. Cardamom is there in the background, I suppose, but I wouldn't have called it out because it's very much a small percentage of this candle. There's more of a sweet spice to this. The violet petals, if anyone's had violet candy, where it literally like those candies called violets and they're just like a little chalky square, but they're very, very floral. You do get some of that. So there's definitely sweet violets in here, which I think is interesting. But I think Bronze Blogger might have said it first. Could have been someone else, but I think he might have said it first because this, what this reminded him of, because it reminds him of one of his top candles, which I would totally agree with. Kind of a bit of a surprise here, but Boathouse Row. So anyone who loved Boathouse Row and has been clamoring for it to come back like I have, I mean, gosh, look how beautiful that wax is in that photo. It's just amazing. This one originally came out late 2012, actually early 2013 after test. So at this point, what, 5 years ago, and it sort of returned as the Bourbon and Bow Ties, but not really. But Boathouse Row was deep blue water, moss, sage, bay leaves. Now, smelling this is, oh my gosh. Granted, this is a couple years old, so I haven't burned this one, so it's like, you're not getting the true original perfect notes. It's drying out a little bit. It's funny, I'm actually getting more of like the bay leaves on this now that it's much drier and kind of almost powdery, more powdery than it had been. But what I get that's reminiscent, the idea of it being a watery, unisex, but somewhat intense fragrance is very similar. I'd say the iris might lean a little bit cleaner, not like cottony or anything like that, but it's just a little bit cleaner of a scent than Boathouse Row, which maybe is a little bit more earthy. But very, very similar in execution. Again, yeah, I think the Boathouse Row perhaps is the moss and the sage and the deep blue water. It's all there. Again, I would say this just a little bit more of like a dried, with that bay leaf, a dried, almost herbaceous note to Boathouse Row. Or this captures something that's really kind of a little bit brighter and fresh, which granted, burning that sucker after as many years, that could come out, but not exactly the same, but really similar and very interesting. Again, they could call this anything they wanted to, especially based on the fact that there's weathered leather, cardamom, and violet petals in there. That's a very complicated conceptual blend that is just, it could be anything, and I really hope they use it in some interesting collection at some point. Then we move on to the final, what may be my favorite. Now, I was excited when I first saw this because they've never really done they've done green tea, you know, green tea nectarine and green tea white pear, which are two fantastic scents from years back. But they've never done a matcha, which really is, it's different than when you think of a standard green tea. Matcha, if you're not familiar, Japanese green tea leaves, it's the highest quality green tea leaves, and it's not, you know, normally you steep your tea leaves in water, take the tea leaves or tea bag out and then drink. With matcha, it is micro ground tea leaves into a powder. So if you've eaten green tea ice cream or green tea treats that have that really like milky, drab, kind of grassy green color, that's the actual natural color of matcha. It's not artificially colored, and you're actually ingesting the tea leaves themselves. So it's so fine ground that it just becomes this like frothy, almost creamy beverage. Incredible, delicious matcha tea. So, but this one I was excited because I'm like, oh man, this could be really good. It could be bakery. It could be more like a matcha almond beverage. The notes on it are fairly simple: matcha green tea and toasted almonds. And when I sniffed it, I didn't really get, I suppose I could, a little bit of matcha. There's some astringency, this is gonna sound weird, but a creamy astringency that I definitely get from matcha. But almond, and certainly toasted almonds in the traditional sense that we're used to, not at all. But the more I sniffed this, I was like, man, this reminds me of something. What could it be? And it was one of those times where it's like, oh man, it kind of reminds me of when I first sniffed, what was it, like maple cinnamon pancakes a couple years back from the holiday collection, and I was like, this is nothing maple or cinnamon or pancakes, what is it? And it ended up being that pumpkin caramel latte, which was also nothing latte, but point is, it was like, I know this, and what could it be? And then it hit me, and luckily I was able to compare it. And this is gonna seem really weird, but no question, this is, I believe, the same candle or very, very close. How crazy is this? First of all, well, I guess not first of all, I'll spoil the name. Lemongrass Cardamom. Now this is back when their aromatherapy had two of the best blends I think they've ever had: lemongrass cardamom and bergamot coriander. And the basics, and when I say the basics, capital D, capital T, capital B, the basic people of the world who are scared off by cardamom because they don't know what it is, and coriander because they don't know what it is, they ended up failing and moving in a different direction to now they're very simple, you know, orange ginger, eucalyptus tea, whatever, aromatherapies. But this really, really beautiful blend, one of my favorites. This was poured, my gosh, I think, what does that say, late 2009, and I remember buying this, I guess in 2009 or 10, at the semi-annual sale for super cheap. I wish I would have gotten more. I got this in a room spray, and also in this. This is a copper lid, which, boy, you don't see those much. And of course the notes, they didn't have notes on the bottom, they just called a mix of lemongrass and cardamom. But I'll tell you, they are like really, really close to being the same. It's got that, again, this is called lemongrass cardamom, but the same way that Iris had cardamom, it's not, you know, like the cardamom that is so intense, like that would remind you of maybe eating Indian food. And it's not lemongrass like lemongrass verbena or any other thing where it's a very, very fresh, you know, kind of green citrus. It's subdued. Gosh, again, I don't know that I agree with almond or necessarily matcha or lemongrass or cardamom. I would love to know really what are the deeper notes in both of these candles. Again, but there's a bit of an astringency to it, but more than anything, it is a warm, comforting, just very, very unique. I wouldn't even call it herbal, wouldn't call it citrus, wouldn't call it woody. I'd say like a fresh, I suppose, but because there's, you know, they're saying cardamom and almonds, it's not a fresh, bright citrus like you'd expect. Just really a bit of sweetness, but I absolutely see the aromatherapy. I think it's very, very relaxing. This was also when I believe they didn't really necessarily say exactly the point of each of their blends. Like, I don't know if it was energy. It just says enhances clarity and soothes the mind. So I don't know, relaxing. But really love that candle and really love this almond matcha. I would love to see this in a 3-wick. Again, this one's so old, it's hard to get a true sniff on it to say for certain if they're exactly the same, but it reminded me of it, and then comparing the two, they are quite similar, and certainly when it's burning, it reminds me of that one back in the day. So really highly recommend checking this out. I think the big thing with most, well, at least with the iris and the almond matcha, don't pay attention to the name, just smell it and see if you like it and what's in it, because it very much is going to be, you know, different than what it says. The sweet tobacco is definitely what it says, which is nice to see. But the other two, really great blends. And just, again, it's the kind of thing where you can't put your finger on it, but it's just, it evokes a feeling or a sense or a mood, and I just really, really like both of them. So that is my review on the, I suppose this is kind of part of the Natural Elements collection, because it does have the same font as the Squat candles, which I'll be reviewing in a minute here, the Squat ones, because they both do say made with essential oils, scented candle, White Barn, in the same font. So I believe this is probably I guess they're calling the single wicks part of the Natural Elements collection. But that's it for this video. Stay tuned for 2 additional, I think, so they're not super long, videos on 2 of the Natural Elements, Squat candles from White Barn. And until next time, guys, take care.